All right, everyone, bring it in for the Week 6 Beef Up Front College Football Preview. Not the sexiest slate this week, but I think it sets up well, Joe, as the appetizer for next week's Holy Grail. I've been calling it the Holy Grail all week for next week's slate of games, obviously, with all the headliners that I think next week we're even going to have to do more than our normal 6 games of the week. We might have to go a little bit deeper just because of all the awesome games. Um, but I think the Holy Grail is like an Indiana Jones reference, and I don't think I've ever watched a minute of Indiana Jones in my life. So I don't know why I've been
Great
walking around
movies,
saying
but if
that.
you're missing out.
But I'm joined by Joseph Kmetz, as always, the fan of the best team in Major League Baseball and Surefire World Series champs in about a month. Joe, how are we feeling about your Mets right now? And then obviously another big week of college football to come.
Well, we're up 3-1 right now as we start recording. I got the game on my TV over there, so if you see me a lot looking like this, that's why. Feel good. We got a lot of game left. I'm not going to start doing anything, talking any shit. But if we win, I will be in the building for game 3. Myself, Pat, who has been a beef up front. He's been on beef at some point. He's part of the beef universe, and Benavides, who is not known to the beef universe, but the three of us will be in the building for game 3,
For
pending
the
we win
sweep.
in advance. But I do have a feeling Reese Hoskins is going to hit a homer to probably take the lead and beat us. And I can just see this being the most torturous, like game 3 tomorrow night. Like the Padres will win, so tomorrow night the only game will be Mets Brewers, and it's going to be on during Thursday Night Football. I'm going to be sitting there wanting to put a bullet in my head, but I feel good right now despite all that. So another great week of games. I don't care what the slate says. There's only one ranked matchup. These are the weeks that a lot of people will be like, ooh, I can get some brownie points for my girlfriend this weekend, take her to the pumpkin patch or go apple picking or take her to Salem like I did last weekend. Like stuff like that where you think, you can get a weekend off. These are the weekends where you'll all of a sudden look up and see 4 ranked teams, have lost to unranked teams. And this is the ultimate chaos weekend leading into next weekend, which is the weekend everyone has had circled. I feel like since April, I've been seeing tweets about October 12th. So this is a weekend you definitely got to pay attention to. It might not be the sexiest slate on paper, but this is a very important weekend, especially for teams that really can't afford, another loss, which you and I will get into in a minute.
I think I saw 8 of the top 15 teams this week are playing on the road. So at least one of those teams is going down. You'd have to say that. But as we said, next week, just a quick look forward: Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, USC, Missouri versus UMass. I'm sure you got that one circled. Texas, Oklahoma. Hell, Louisville, Virginia could be a good game. Virginia's surprising. Arizona, BYU could be a good one. Florida at Tennessee, Ole Miss, LSU, Kansas State, Colorado. I mean, it's from noon to bedtime. You got great games on TV all next week, and it could look circumstances, teams like the pressure on them next week, in those big games could be a lot different depending on how they come out and show up this week. A lot of these teams are on bye this week, have the opportunity to rest going into the big games next weekend. But as always, we have a lot to get into. I mean, I think you can look last week and pinpoint right at Ole Miss. We didn't think that there was a chance in hell that Kentucky was going to win that game. So things like this happen all the time. And I think, Joe, now we have a better feeling on some of these teams. I think last week was our best week combined on the show with our picks. I went 12-8. You went 12-8. I went 4-2 straight up, 4-2 against the spread, 3-3 on my over-under, 0-1 on my dog of the week, which was Louisville. I had them plus 6.5. They lose by 7 to Notre Dame. And then 1-0 on my lock of the week. Escaping me right now what I had. Do you remember what my lock of the week was last week?
Your lock of the week last week.
Oh, it was Ohio State minus 23, I believe it was, against Michigan State.
Yeah, Sparty.
So that one cashed. And then you go 12-8 as well. You go 6-0 straight up, 6 winners there. 3-3 against the spread, 2-4 on the over-under. I think you've been struggling with the over-unders all year, right?
I think, Coyle, you and I have done the show. I've struggled with the over-unders.
0-1 on your dog. You had New Mexico State plus 9.5, and they lost by 10. So we each lost our dog by the hook. And then you went 1-0 on your lock. I believe you were on Boise State last week, -7.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, a pretty successful week last week. And as I said, I think we have got a lot of data points on these teams now. We have a better feeling, better understanding. Hopefully, really going to start hitting our stride with all our picks. As always, though, we'll go through the best 5 games of the week as well as the group of 5 game of the week. This one more so for one team, just kind of talk about them a little bit than the other, but um, an important slate as always. It's such a week to week league. It's not like the MLB regular season or an NBA regular season. Every game matters, even with the 12-team playoff. There's no room for slip ups, and you got to have the gimmies. So we start on Saturday at noon. One of these top 15 teams that we talked about going on the road with number 9, Missouri, going to Texas A&M to play the 25th ranked Aggies. Noon kick on ABC. A&M a 2-point favorite here at home. Over under is 48.5. Joe, I think we get an upset in the first game here.
I think we do, Coyle. I am going to go with A&M here, 24-17. I believe it'll be pretty low scoring. I like the under here, which if you've been following my unders, good luck. But I really think this is a game for A&M that they're going to pull off an upset here in Mizzou. Very lucky to escape Vanderbilt. This is a team, I think they're good. I just think the number 9 is a little bit too high. They really haven't had to play the most daunting schedule. Boston College, who knows how good they really are. I feel like they were ranked a little bit high because of the Florida State win. Now you have them going on the road to Kyle Field, which is one of the toughest environments when that place gets rocking in all of college football. And, A&M right now, the loss to Notre Dame is kind of hurting them in the rankings, but they win this game against a top 10 SEC team. That can really set them up to still have a very successful season in year 1 under Mike Elko. I think this is going to be a real tight game. I don't know. Is Wegman starting? I've been seeing stuff.
Yeah, I think it's still up in the air. It's probably going to be one of those things where whoever, they trot out, that's when you first know who the starting quarterback is. But I would keep reading. I think that Wegman looked terrible, and I think he's looked pretty solid and gives you the rushing element as well.
I was going to say, Wegman, I'm not a strong believer in, but this kind of like how I picked Michigan a couple weeks ago against USC, where it feels like it makes no sense that they should win the game, but I feel like they'll pull it out. Their defense will make a big play late. And Mizzou, I feel like if you can just lock up Luther Burden, I feel like you'll be pretty good. So I think if they can do that, A&M will find a way to win this game. It's not going to be a pretty game. I'm glad this is the noon game to kind of start the day off. But give me A&M here, 24-17.
Yeah, real tough read on this game for me in terms of who comes out on top, but I do really like the under. Texas A&M 3-2 to the under this year with all 3 of those games that have gone under their totals have gone under this 48.5 total as well. I'm a big believer in their defense, and Mizzou is 3-1 to the under as well. This reminds me a lot of the Mizzou Boston College game from a few weeks ago that ended at 48 points. So in this circumstance, that would be an under. For who wins the game, it really is a coin flip for me. There's so many factors I could see going either way. Mizzou coming off a bye, though, which I think is huge. A&M had a tough game last week against Arkansas that they pulled out a win, a rivalry game. How do they bounce back this week? A lot of factors in this one, as I said. But when it's usually this close, I tend to lean to the home side, especially with the point spread indicating that they're the favorite. This is a game I'm not going to bet a side in, but the under is one of my favorite plays of the week. But I'm just going to take the home team in this one. Keep it simple. Big believer in this A&M defense, and I think that they slow down a Mizzou offense that hasn't performed to the preseason expectation. So I'm going to kind of split the difference here, take A&M to win, Mizzou to cover. So I'll go A&M 21, Mizzou 20. So Mizzou +2 in the under of 48.5 hit in there. All right, another noon game. And Joe, I think, especially if your Mets do win, the Phillies play. Phillies Mets could be at 4:08 on Saturday. You got a lot of noon games, a lot of nice warm-ups to kind of ease yourself into some potential playoff baseball there at 4. But this is another noon kick. SMU at number 22, Louisville. Noon kick, as I said, on ESPN. Louisville, a 7-point home favorite here. Over-under is 56.5, Joe. Do you like the Cardinals in this one after the loss to Notre Dame last week?
Yeah, so I'm going to go take Louisville in the bounce-back spot. Him winning 41-38. I think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. I will take SMU to cover. I think SMU is a criminally underrated team. I think that people, Coyle, including myself, I texted you after they lost to BYU that, they were lucky to even have 2 wins at the start of the season, needing to escape Nevada, losing to BYU, which now BYU is the highest rank. If the playoff was today, BYU is the Big 12 representative in the college football playoff. So I think SMU is a really good team. One of my favorite bets, actually, win or lose. I locked this in Sunday night. I put a little sprinkle on SMU to win the ACC at 12-1. That's just a bet because if you look, they do not play Clemson. They do not play Miami. Even if they lose this Louisville game, the schedule after this is very, very manageable. I think they can go through realistically unscathed, so they would have the 1 loss. Then it's just kind of I'm picking them to pull off the upset in the ACC title game against most likely Miami. But Miami has, shown some weaknesses as well. But I think Louisville wins this game. This is one of those games for SMU. Even though Florida State stinks, this was still like SMU beat Florida State. This is big 4-year program. It was a sold out crowd. The celebrations were awesome, seeing the SMU players after that game. Even though Florida State isn't very good, this is still really good for their program. And I think having to go on the road now to Louisville, who just, coming off a big loss, is kind of going with the bounce back spot. I think SMU is actually the better team. But in this spot on the road, I'm going to go with Louisville.
I'm going to go upset alert. I'm going to say give me the Mustangs outright in this one. I've not been able to get a fingerprint, though, on this Louisville team all year. I had 2 weeks ago, I had them getting upset by Georgia Tech. Last week, I had them upsetting Notre Dame. So I haven't been able to get a good fingerprint on this one. So probably fade me and take Louisville in this game. But this is the SMU team you were kind of just touching on that has been playing better as the season has kind of gone along. Got out to a bit of a slow start. But this is the team I was expecting to see over the last few weeks. Since only scoring 15 against BYU, put up 66 on TCU, 42 on Florida State, averaging 54 points per game over the last 2. This is the kind of air raid, spread it out team that we were expecting and talking about throughout the offseason. I think the offense has finally found its stride and its footing, and I think they're going to try and make this a track meet against Louisville. And if it does get into that type of game, I'm going to take SMU if it becomes that style of fight. You saw what BYU did, slow it down, make it, I think the final was 18-15 in that game. That's the type of game Louisville is going to want to play, I think, to win this one. If SMU is able to get out early, I think that's huge. Maybe even look at an SMU like first quarter money line, first quarter spread, first half spread type of thing. If they can get out there and set the tone and the tempo, the type of game that this is going to be, I think that pays huge favors for them. I think that they make this a track meet. And I think that they win this game outright at Louisville. Give me SMU 37, Louisville 31. So SMU +7 and over 56.5. All right, we head to 3:30 now. Your last little bit of football before heading into the NLDS. Number 12, Ole Miss at South Carolina. 3:30 kick on ESPN. Rebels, a 9.5-point road favorite here, coming off that loss to Kentucky as a 17-point favorite last weekend. Over under 52.5. Joe, I think Ole Miss bounces back in this one.
I do not, Coyle. I have the Gamecocks winning 31-28. I'm going to go take the Cox +9.5. Love that bet. I think that might be, I'm not going to pick it for my lock because I, love looking at other games, and I found a bet that I like just a little bit more. But I'm also going with the over of 52.5 here. I feel like this game is going to almost be a copy and paste of the LSU South Carolina game from a couple weeks ago, except this time I think the Cox are going to come out on top. Ole Miss just a brutal way now. You lose at home to a Kentucky team that people thought you were going to handle. Now you have to go to South Carolina, which is a team and a program that is hungry for a big win. We saw when LSU came to town a couple weeks ago, the environment and the vibes will be just as high. And that's why I'm taking the Cox. Not a lot of on-field analysis, but I just think Ole Miss kind of got punched in the mouth, and we saw what happened when they had to go play man football. And Kentucky, made it ugly, slogged it up, and Ole Miss just couldn't get going. And I think, South Carolina is going to kind of do that here, force a turnover too. That's really going to help with the scoring. So I am going to go with the Gamecocks pulling off the upset. And if not, I love the 9.5.
We got Daniel checking in the chat here with a yo. If anyone ever hopping in the chat, any questions on any games or comments on any teams, drop them. We'll be happy to answer throughout the show as well. But Joe, I'm there with you. I like South Carolina in this game. I think it's a boomer bust spot. I think South Carolina either wins this game outright or they get blown out by 3 scores and Ole Miss responds in an emphatic way from last week. It does sound like Sellers is back, and I think that's big. South Carolina whooped up on that Kentucky team that is looking legit, and they were beating up on LSU, as you were talking about, before Sellers got hurt. If Robbie Ashford has to play, certainly a different scenario. Like if I see Robbie Ashford trotting out there to start, or they're saying pregame, like he's starting, I might cash out or just, double my money instead and put it on Ole Miss. Because Ashford to Sellers, I think, is a massive difference. Sellers has been, when healthy, a pretty good quarterback this year and gives them a legit dual threat, but the ability to throw the ball as well. Like that's what I'm saying. We're dual threat. Ashford, just a pure kind of runner. I think he could really struggle against this Ole Miss defense. Ole Miss, I think last week is like a season derailing type loss where all offseason was kind of made up as, this is a different Ole Miss team. This isn't just a track meet team. They're better in the trenches. They'll be able to beat you up front. And Kentucky controlled the line of scrimmage and pushed them around and exposed kind of Lane Kiffin as team's fatal flaw from all these years, and that's at the line of scrimmage. And I was talking about this to a few other people. When you look at Ole Miss, and all we talked about was how good of an offseason they had and the roster that they built through the transfer portal, we don't know really how much of a team this is. Like they had those 4 kind of cupcake games throughout the first few weeks of the season where they were all blowouts. We had never seen this team in the past have adversity before, or kind of how they respond from this, especially this group with so many new guys. Is that a loss that kind of separates the team? Do they fold from here? Like, I think that is a big thing to watch this week and could tell you a lot about their season coming up, because next week they have as well the LSU game, and LSU coming off a bye. You could flip the switch and Ole Miss could have 3 straight losses before you know it and be out of the playoff picture. So it's a huge spot for Ole Miss. But I'm a believer in this South Carolina team at home. I think the point spread is kind of telling us Ole Miss, but I might be falling into the trap here. I'm going to go with South Carolina. I think they win in a close one. Like I said, if you're going to take them 9.5, I think they're going to win the football game. But if you're believing in Ole Miss to cover, that's going to be a blowout type win. I'm going to go South Carolina 24, Ole Miss 21. Upset here. Cox plus 9.5. Love that play, in the under 52.5. All right, we go to a slugfest in the Big Ten. Rutgers at Nebraska, 4 o'clock on FS1. Shout out Nebraska. I think this is like their 3rd time on the show already this season, and you probably couldn't have said that, that they've been on the show 3 times in the entirety that we've done the show. And has Rutgers ever been on the show? Sitting here at 4-0. 4 o'clock kick on FS1. Nebraska 7-point favorite, over under 41. Joe, do you like the Huskers at home here?
I don't. I'm going with Rutgers on the road. They continue their momentum. They get the big win here. I got them winning 22-18. I'm giving it a weird score because I think it's going to be an ugly football game. I just think Schiano, in terms of coaching, is light years ahead of Matt Rule. Nebraska now could very well end up winning this game, pretty handily, because Rutgers isn't a ranked team, which Matt Rule is allergic to beating ranked teams. But that's kind of just my one real thing at the end of the day. If you look at the coaching matchup, Schiano is a way better coach than Nebraska or Matt Rule. Oh my God, excuse me. But Rutgers a couple weeks ago went on the road, beat Virginia Tech on the road. They really handled, that environment pretty well. And Virginia Tech, when they're rocking, is a pretty tough place to play in. And I think Rutgers already has shown, they lost at home to Illinois, which no one thought, was going to happen. Illinois going into that atmosphere on a Friday night. Now you're going here 4 o'clock. You're in a real needed spot for Nebraska, so that does kind of scare me with my pick. But I love Rutgers plus the 7. I just don't see them getting blown out, even if they lose this game. But I am going to go with the Scarlet Knights on the road. And I think if they win this game, we might need to have a discussion. I'm not saying we're going to have a discussion now, but there may need to be a dialogue if Rutgers wins this game. That's all I'll say.
I think this is just the most pure Big Ten old school slugfest incoming. Nebraska only allowing 12.2 points per game this season. Rutgers only allowing 16.2 points per game this season over their first 4 games. Just a lot of defense in this one, Joe, and it's kind of the high school Harry rah-rah speech type of game where who's the toughest the longest? I think it really might come down to that. Who wants it more? All the cliches, you can throw them all out. But I think it really could apply in this game because these are two tough-nosed teams. I do think, though, in these games where you have these really physical matchups, it comes down to if a quarterback can make a throw on a 3rd and 5 and help move the chains at the end of the game, something like that. And I have a lot more faith in Dylan Raiola to do that than a guy like whoever Rutgers is throwing out at quarterback. I know he's the former Minnesota transfer. I'd never know his name. Kalakis or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not even going to myself.
Yeah. But I have a lot more faith in Dylan Raiola to step up to the plate and make some clutch throws. I think Nebraska bounces back, too, from that Illinois loss 2 weeks ago. I said it 3 or 4 weeks ago. I didn't think Nebraska would lose a home game all year. That's an electric environment, especially now that they're playing better. Seems to be really juiced up. I think they might have been sleeping a little bit when Illinois came in there. But I do think Rutgers is good enough to hang, but I really like the under. Under is one of my favorite plays this week. I'll go Nebraska to win, Rutgers to cover. So Nebraska 20, Rutgers 14, Rutgers +7, and the under of 41 hitting there. All right, 2 games to go before our lock of the week and our dog of the day. Go to our G5 game of the week. Wanted to give this team some love. There are not that many great G5 games this week. Got UNLV on Friday against Syracuse, but usually like to do G5 versus G5. So you got a Sunbelt game here with 4-0 James Madison at UL Monroe, 3-1, a team that you're very fond of, Joe. 7 o'clock on ESPNU. JMU is a 17-point favorite, over under 48.5. And I know your UL Monroe Warhawks coming into the year, 1.5 wins was the over under. They're already at 3, so that all jokes aside, good for them with an entire season really to play. Do they have a chance here at knocking off this JMU team that's been on a roll these past couple of weeks?
I don't think they have a chance here, which sucks because UL Monroe is an awesome story. When you can double your projected win total in 4 weeks, that's pretty good. Even if they were to lose out, no one was expecting UL Monroe to do anything this year. But I just think JMU is a much better football team. I watched them play against North Carolina, and they just dismantled the Tar Heels. They dismantled. Who did they play last week, Coyle? They scored 63 last week as well.
State.
Yeah, I mean, they look to be – it's Boise State, UNLV, and them right now, in my opinion. I don't know what that is. You see that too?
Yeah.
Was it because I did that? That's crazy. I've never seen that before.
What?
That I don't know what that was. I'm still on my phone, so I didn't press anything. I have no clue. But I'm going with JMU here to smash UL Monroe, 45-7. I'll take them to cover. I'll take the over. I think JMU might get the over by themselves. But like I said before that happened, it's going to be JMU, Boise, and UNLV. Probably the Boise UNLV winner. But I am going to go with JMU here with ease. Yeah,
JMU really just on the show this week to talk a little bit about them because I think they're starting to move into that conversation of the potential G5 team. They've put up 133 points the last 2 weeks. James Madison has 70 on UNC, 63 on Ball State. Offense is humming, and a quarterback to keep an eye out for as we push forward in this G5 race. Alonza Barnett, the JMU quarterback, 1,022 passing yards, 12 passing touchdowns, and only 1 interception on the year. And he's rushed it for 255 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. So a guy that certainly keep an eye out for, one of the dynamic playmakers at the G5 level. If he continues to have this success and this JMU offense does, JMU has a very good chance to run the table and go undefeated. I like them to win this game. I like them to cover, and I like the over as well. JMU 40, UL Monroe 10. So JMU -17 and over 48.5. And our final game of the week, originally, Joe, I had Iowa versus Ohio State in this one, but I think this one's a little bit more interesting. Number 10, Michigan at Washington, 7:30 on NBC. First game as conference rivals, also a rematch of last year's national title game. Washington, a 2.5-point favorite here at home, over under 41.5. Huskies, a favorite against the number 10 team, and Washington's only 3-2, coming off a loss to Rutgers and already has a loss to Washington State. What the hell's going on here?
Coyle, I think this is just a Michigan team, and the odds makers are kind of seeing it that can't pass the football, and going on the road to this Washington team who, 2 close losses, 1 loss. I know Rutgers, like I was saying, that was just a Shiano win. Every single stat was in Washington's favor. There's something on Twitter every week I see it. It's like, how bad did we really get beat? And it puts like all the analytics and all the stats together, and it shows like EPA. I don't even know what it stands for, but like on a graph, and the disparity of this game. Like Washington should have won this game according to the analytics by like 2 scores. They lost a real tough game going across the country on the road. They lost a rivalry game to Washington State, which I know Washington State is exactly a world-beating team, but that's just a really tough game to play, especially early on in the season compared to later in the year. This is just a game I feel like Washington is going to sack up and just play another like old school kind of Big Ten game. I have Washington 21, Michigan 14. I'm kind of just copy and paste what I said about Michigan USC into this game. I think Michigan's going to be the better football team. But this is going to be one of those games you'll be like, Michigan had 330 rushing yards, but still, lost the football game. I don't think they'll have that much. But I think it's going to be one of those games where Michigan like outplays them. The defense kind of looks better than Washington's, but Washington ends up getting this win because this is a needed spot. Primetime TV, you have a top 10 team coming to your place. Point spread wise, it isn't an upset, but I think Washington pulls this upset off. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you can't throw the ball for more than 100 yards, it's going to be really hard to win a football game. Eventually, there's going to come a point where they're going to dare you to throw the football. And if Michigan, let's say Washington gets 2 quick scores, maybe a defensive touchdown or maybe a special teams touchdown, and all of a sudden Michigan's down 2 scores and they have to try to start throwing the football, I think they can be in a lot of trouble. Although I am going with the under here, low-scoring game, I think Washington finds a way to get it done. I just don't trust Michigan away from home because they've even showed it, surviving against Minnesota last week, surviving against Fresno, not necessarily surviving, but winning a close game against Arkansas State. Like Michigan is not going to blow teams out. And I just think this is really tough going on the road after, big game against USC and a big rivalry game against Minnesota. It's tough to go, on the road and try to win this game as well for a team that it means so much more for.
Yeah, it's a big under week for me. Like on my card, I love a lot of unders, and I think this is another game where the under applies for sure. I heard a great point though in this game when you look at the Washington staff. Head coach Jed Fish, former guy that has a lot of NFL experience. Steve Belichick, obviously a lot of experience coaching with the Patriots. So many former NFL coaches on it. They should easily be able to decipher this completely one-dimensional Michigan offense and really just kind of find a way to shut it down or just slow it down. And like you said, completely dare them to throw the football. In the 2 games against USC and Minnesota since Alex Orji took over at quarterback for Michigan, Michigan has ran it 89 times and has thrown it only 30 times. A complete one-dimensional offense. And once again, this is Michigan, Joe. This isn't Army. This isn't Navy. This isn't Air Force. It's embarrassing that this is the way that they have to play football. But I think at this point in the season, they're still number 10 in the country. You have to give them props for basically admitting like they know what they have. And they say, basically, we're going to line up. We're going to come right at you. And you better be ready to stop it. We're not coming out here throwing the ball. If we lose running the ball 50 times, 60 times a game, so be it. But that's the only way that we think we can win. We think our defense is good enough. And if we can make this, a 13-10 game each and every week, we like our chances more than if we're going to try and go out there and force it. I know they won that USC game a few weeks ago, going 27-24, I think the final was, going pretty well over the total at the end of the day. But I feel like those kind of occurrences are going to be a lot more rare than if they continue to play this way and it's like a 14-10. I think more so you'll see Michigan get blown out more throughout the season because they're not able to keep up with some of these better teams that they're going to have to run into down the line, like in Oregon, like an Ohio State that they have on the schedule as well. You said it best where Washington completely outplayed Rutgers. And I watched that game, like I didn't think like watching it was that much of a discrepancy, but Washington outgained Rutgers 521 to 299. And it sounded like they turned it over a bunch. So it was really odd to wind up seeing the result. I was glad I was on Rutgers, but I think that performance by Washington at Rutgers is kind of indicated in this point spread as well. And the books are really telling you that Michigan's not much. I saw earlier this week, Michigan, despite being number 10 in the country, plus 800 to make the playoff, minus 1,600 to miss it. That just goes to show you the respect or lack thereof that Michigan's getting right now. Washington held Rutgers to 5.6 yards per carry on 33 carries, which isn't great, but it's solid. I think that's good enough to kind of hold this Michigan team in check running the football. You just can't let them be running for 250, 300 yards and icing the game away. The Huskies can make Michigan have 3rd and 5 and beyond each kind of set it downs next or on Saturday. I think that's kind of the goal and the position where make them throw the ball or have to advance the ball and stuff these early run plays. I think that's the main goal. I'm all over the under in this one. I think it's a really low scoring game. But to pick a winner and a side, I'm going to roll with the point spread there and go with Washington 20-17. So Washington -2.5 and obviously under 41.5. All right, those are our games of the week. We now go to the dog of the day and the lock of the week. Lock of the week last week, 1-0 for both of us. Dog of the day, we lost by a half point on the hook. So hoping for to be on the better side of that this week. I'll start off with dog of the day. I'm going to double down with South Carolina. It was a card that I'm not overly in love with the dog. I kind of like Rutgers, as we talked about, and I like SMU. So a lot of my underdogs this week we already touched on throughout. So I'm not going to force one. I'm going to roll with South Carolina. As I said, I think the overall roster of Ole Miss and not really being a team, I don't know how they're going to respond to a deflating double-digit favorite loss like they had last week that, the season could potentially spiral out of control if they since losing that one, potentially losing this one to South Carolina and then LSU next week. It could get bad in Ole Miss for a season that started out looking promising with all those blowouts. But as I said in the breakdown of the South Carolina game, boomer bust. I think if you're going to take them the 9.5, South Carolina, take them on the money line as well. Because if this is a close game, I think it definitely favors South Carolina at home.
My my dog of the day is going to be the Florida Gators +2.5. What?
Chump.
I am a chump. This is a fucking show some pride game, Florida. You have UCF coming to town. This is supposed to be not even the little brother. This is supposed to be like your little brother's kid. This is like your little nephew. UCF is coming to town. They're a 2.5-point favorite going into the Swamp. This is a game. Florida is terrible, by the way. I don't want to.
And UCF just got killed by Colorado.
Yes, UCF. This screams. This is the ugliest dog. Coyle, like you said, a lot of the dogs. It's the weeks like this where there's not a lot of ranked games. It's really tough to kind of see your dog because I see so many options. But I'm just kind of going with the home dog. UCF going to the Swamp. Florida winning this football game ugly, kind of like how Florida State beat Cal a couple weeks ago. I could see this game being like a 14-10 slugfest. UCF, you're coming off of a spot where you were in national TV against Colorado. You had a chance to kind of flex and prove that, like, hey, we're a legit football team in the Big 12. Now you have to go on the road to Florida. Even with a down Florida team, they still consider themselves the big brother to you. And I think Florida is going to win this game ugly. It's not going to be pretty. I definitely sound like a chump, but I loved Florida State when they were playing Cal. Everyone called me crazy and scared me out of taking the bet. I didn't take it, and they covered the 2.5. I am going to take Florida this week +2.5 against UCF.
Here's something crazy that I was looking at last week because I really loved UCF against Colorado, and they actually had a look-ahead line. I want to say it was out on Thursday or Friday because I was like, all right, if UCF does go and kill Colorado, I think they might be like a 6.5, 7-point favorite at Florida because I thought UCF was legit and Colorado shut them down last week. UCF, the look-ahead line, they were only a 1-point favorite. So after getting blown out by Colorado, money's probably came in on them, obviously. So they're now up to 2.5. I think I've even seen a couple times this week at 3. So that just goes to show you everything you need to know about the state of Florida right now. But I vow not to bet on Billy Napier or DJU the rest of the season. So jump in my book, but you had the call a couple weeks ago against Cal. So we'll see how it goes this week. Lock of the week, looking for 2 more cashes. As I said, I'm all over unders this week, and I'll go with an under that wasn't as part of our 6 games of the week. I'm going to go Boston College, Virginia, under a 53. BC 4-1 to the under this year. UVA 2-2 to the under, so splitting hairs there. But this bet is more based on the way that BC plays. Run heavy, ball control type offense. I think this game is played in the 40s, like a 24-20 type of matchup. So I really like the under of 53 in Boston College, Virginia. Boring plays out of me this week, but it might just kind of be that way. And we're setting up for a Steven Spielberg motion picture fest next weekend.
Corey, that was. I'm very impressed with that. With the name drop right there.
Did he do Indiana Jones?
I believe that was one of his movies. Yeah, Steven Spielberg did a lot. I couldn't name them off the top of my head right now, but he's done a lot of shit. A lot of, as you would say, nerd shit, which you never have watched, as you say. But I am
wow,
gonna go.
He did do Indiana Jones.
I think you watch Indiana Jones. I think you're just kind of.
I definitely have not. I thought of it right when I got out of the car today. I was like, Holy Grail week. And I was like, I don't even know what that is.
Well, I'm going to go with Duke plus 9.5 as my lock of the week. I think this is way too much points. Shout out to is it Mark from Philly or Mark in Philly, Coyle, your boy. I saw him actually when I saw him put this out as a play. I'm like, I love it. That's my lock of the week. I'm riding that. I think Duke, being 5-0, they're like the quietest 5-0 Power 5 team. I don't want to say ever. That's a little bit dramatic, but no one's talking about them. I know they've won ugly. Like there's no real. They came back down 20-0 against UNC last week. They only beat UConn by 5, Northwestern by 6. And that Northwestern game was in overtime. But I just don't think Georgia Tech is very good. We were all really impressed after they beat Florida State. But since then, they've lost at Syracuse, at Louisville, and their only other wins are against VMI and Georgia State. I'm not saying they're not going to win the game. I'm just saying I feel like 9.5 is a lot of points. So give me the Blue Devils on the road. I feel like they cover that pretty easily.
All right. Well, that'll do it. As we alluded to a lot of the show, next weekend, the calendar, the schedule that we've been looking forward to for months since we saw these games finally come out. And, if there's a game 4 next week, would that be Wednesday?
Yes. So it's
yeah.
we'll
record on Thursday next week.
Yeah.
The Phillies could have won the series, the Mets could have won the series, or we are recording the night before a deciding game 5. So could be a long week for either one of us or a exciting week. I'm rooting for it. I think it'd be fun, kind of a exciting thing to brag about and maybe kill each other about as well.
And then the Jets and the Eagles play in the Super Bowl. And then one of us gets our revenge.
Oh, we should have done the exacta. If you're able to do that, Eagles, Phillies, Mets to NFL or NLDS exacta.
NLDS exacta Super Bowl exacta. That would be just call the number. They wouldn't even place it. Just 1-800-GAMBLER would be dialed.
All right, well, that will do it. Good luck to everyone this week, and we will talk next week for the biggest week of the season.